Welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast with your host, Funk Roberts.
We are live, and welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast. This is episode number 77, and I am your host, Funk Roberts. I'm known around the world as a guy who helps men in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond get in the best shape of their lives through workouts, nutrition, naturally increasing testosterone and balancing hormones, recovery, mindset, and everything to do with men's health. And I'm excited that you're here. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. And, before we start today, I'm really excited actually, because we've got a good friend of mine. His name is Frank Rich. And Frank Rich, although he's in the fitness world, he has a lot of clout in the fitness world and things that he's done. He has rebuilt himself and rebuilt his professional, his company, his vision to help men break free from the shackles of porn addiction through the power of faith and fitness. So keeping that fitness in play, but really and truly focusing more on porn addiction. And his story is incredible. There's a lot of men out there who struggle with porn addiction, not just men over the age of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, but how it's affecting our kids, how it's affecting our grandchildren. As men over 40, as alpha men, we need to not only break free from our shackles if anybody out there listening struggles with porn addiction, but how do we have that conversation with our kids? How do we have that conversation with our grandchildren? How do we have that conversation and bring light to it as opposed to keeping it in the dark? Because when you struggle with things like porn addiction, it affects everything in your life. In fact, your life becomes unmanageable. And when your life becomes unmanageable, that means you're in addiction. You're addicted to something that's taking away from your life. And we need to bring that back. And so Frank Rich, superhuman Frank Rich, is going to take us through his journey, take us through how we can break free from the shackles, and also what he's doing to help more and more men rebuild and recover from porn addiction. And, I'm really excited about this. This is something that not a lot of people will talk about openly, but it needs to be talked about. It really does. It needs to be a household word because it is so powerfully thrown into anyone's everyday life. It comes for you. Porn comes to you. And we're not talking about old school porn like when I was younger, because I'm 52. So, it used to be Betamax. You get a Betamax, you get it on satellite, and you'd watch American Triple Ecstasy or whatever it was. But it wasn't like readily available. You had to, magazines, you had to search, you had to find, you had to grind, you had to dig, you had to figure out if your buddy of yours has something, and then all you guys get together and just watch or whatever. It wasn't something that was readily available like it is now. Like literally in 1 second, I can go to anywhere and Instagram, and porn can be, if I click one thing, it can be served right in my entire search. All of the things that come down can be all related to one picture of a butt or one picture of, side boob or whatever it is. It's insane. And it's coming for everybody if we're not shining a light. So Frank's going to shine a light. And before Frank shines that light, if you need help with your fitness, with your health, it's 2022, it's January. Everyone has, our resolutions, our goals, what have you. Fitness is always up there, but it's always the one that always gets thrown to the side. Then definitely 100% join over40alpha.com. It's $1, guys. 30 days. I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to make sure you lose 7 to 20 pounds in 30 days, joining the Over 40 Alpha Brotherhood, and then joining 10,000 men over the age of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, all over the world, completely transforming their lives, completely changing their lives with monthly workout, follow along workouts. We've got weekly coaching, 10 a.m. Sunday, every Sunday. We do a weekly live coaching call. I mean, it's an insane program, and you get all access for $1. So go to over40alpha.com and get on that. But for now, let's talk about, the other thing too, before we go into it, I just want to make sure that if you're listening to this right now, I want you to get this link. Frank has a 7-step guide to living life without porn. It's a free ebook. And if you go to the 7stepguide.com, So the 7stepdiet.com/opt-in. It's a free ebook. Of course, you're going to have to give your email, but you do want to give your email because you want more information from Frank. You want Frank to help you because that's what he's doing. He's helping men out there. And this is not sex addiction. Sex addiction and porn addiction are two different things. They're two different types of addiction. It's like alcohol and narcotics, two different types of addiction. So really, truly, get that step, the TH7 SEVEN step guide to .com/opt-in and jump on that right now and sit back, listen up, and let's break free from the shackles of porn. Get it done. We are live. And I am super excited today to have my good friend, Frank Rich, in the house. You know, Frank and I have known each other for many, many years. Met each other here in Toronto and then, back and forth online. And I was on Frank's podcast and, Frank's done a lot in the world of fitness, regarding your muscle building program, certified trainer, nutrition coach, bodybuilder, entrepreneur, building a massive following and helping so many men build this masthetic physique, right? I remember that masthetic physique, man. I love that. I love it. And now the transformation into, taking something that really affected you in your life and now sharing that and helping others is incredible. And this is kind of like one of those taboo conversations and topics that it's not very comfortable for people. It's comfortable for people who are in addiction or using or in a specific, strip joint or whatever, but it's not something that you want to, talk about openly. It's something that we hide. And so today, Frank is going to take us through porn addiction and how that affects us, how that affects men, and how that affects our kids as well. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Frank. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, brother. Good to see you, man. I'm, really looking forward to this conversation, man. Just great to see your face, hear your voice again. Yeah. Glad you've kicked that COVID thing, man. And I want to honor you, man. I appreciate you for opening up, your podcast here for this conversation. You hit on a couple of things here right at the beginning. It is a taboo conversation. It is something that we try to keep secret. And I think just knowing that, it's like, okay, let's open up the box there and kind of talk about the elephant in the room. Like, why is it so taboo? Why is it such a secret? And I just want to maybe kind of set, the preface here. Like, I'm not going to come at this from a morality standpoint. Yes, I am a believer here. It's a big part. My faith is a big part of my life and my story that we've, gotten to this point. But I don't want this to be a like good versus bad conversation. It's not something I'm really interested in. And I think that's where a lot of people come when they hear this conversation. They're immediately thinking like, if they've been consuming porn or if they've been watching porn, like we're judging them. And that's not where I'm going to come. I'm hopefully going to be able to provide a little bit of insight, a little bit of education on some of the science, what it's doing to our brain. And then I'll kind of let you see where we want to go here, Dan. But I'm grateful for you for opening up your platform here today to have this conversation. So thank you.
No problem. I mean, it's very exciting. So let's start with you. Like how did you get in the fitness industry first? And then how did this occur? Like, how did that transformation into porn addiction occur?
Yeah, no, great question. Fitness has been, really been a part of my life forever. Growing up, I was an athlete. I was a competitive athlete, all through, elementary school, into little league, into high school. I was, I lettered in multi-sports in high school. I didn't go beyond that. I don't have a resume like yourself of traveling the world playing professional sports, but, I competed at a moderately high level, through my teenage and high school years. But at the same time, like I also kind of always cared like a little bit of extra fluff. Like there was no talk about nutrition or healthy eating, like kind of growing up. We ate dinner out of the box many nights. We ate what was there and readily available. So, I definitely struggled with, I guess you would say maybe some confidence issues, kind of as I was getting into my teenage years, like not really comfortable taking the shirt off. Even though I was like a high performing athlete, I had that kind of like little bit of layer of fluff on the outside. So when I graduated high school, like I made one commitment. Like when I left the small town where I was going to school, and I said, the next time these people from this town see me, they're going to see a completely different body. So it was that first summer right out of high school, man. I joined a 24-hour World Gym Fitness. And I just fell in love with it, man. Obviously you can see I got a couple posters of Arnold behind me here. The Arnold's Bodybuilding Encyclopedia was one of the first books that I ever picked up, and I still got it. You can see it on the corner here, right behind me. But so I fell in love with it, right out of the gate, man. And I mean, that first summer out of high school, my body change. I mean, I probably dropped 20 pounds of fat, probably put on 25 pounds of muscle. I mean, it was rapid. And I realized then that I had, you know, the proclivity to put muscle on, not at a like very easy level. Like I'm not a pro bodybuilder IFBB, but the ability for me to grow and get stronger was something that I was gifted with. So I fell in love with it, man, you know, right at 18, 19 years old. And it stuck with me, you know, until my mid 20s. So, you know, I attended school, you know, university here for 2 semesters. I knew that schooling wasn't going to be for me. We'll probably get into kind of my entrepreneur journey here as well later on today. But, you know, through corporate America in my, you know, my early 20s and just kind of landing small time jobs, like I started writing programs for people just on the side. You know, I'd gotten, you know, at that time it was the ISSA certification, just because I wanted to kind of educate myself a little better. So, you know, I started just kind of writing programs for my friends and people that would ask for me. And then when I was 24, I got hired at a local gym here, huge gym franchise. They're no longer around. They sold to LA Fitness. But that was my first taste of like working, I guess you could say, in the fitness industry. So I was a weekend sales manager, selling memberships, selling personal training, kind of bringing people into the gym. For one, I realized like the fitness industry has the ability to make a lot of money. You know, I was making 6 figures, you know, 24, 25 years old, just selling gym memberships. So I was like, okay, there's something to this as well. And that's when I got introduced to the sport of bodybuilding. So I met my first coach, I met my first trainer around 25, started competing. This would have been 2008. So from 2008 till, you know, really when I met you, which would have been 2017, I identified as a competitive bodybuilder. Like it was a big part of who I thought I was and who I wanted people to see me as. And it stems from a lot of that insecurity that I had when I was a young kid growing up, because I thought if people would see me and respect me as this big, strong, kind of alpha masculine man, then I would immediately earn their respect. So for me, it became like the core part of who I was, training, bodybuilding. Now I left the gym industry shortly after 2009. So 2010 to 2013, I was very successful in kind of corporate America. I was doing corporate recruiting, high level stuff there, making a lot of money. But I found myself after like a year and a half, you know, I was making $150,000, almost $200,000 a year. Like any free moment I had was spent researching bodybuilding, was spent researching training, was writing programs for my friends. So I knew back then that the corporate thing, like working for somebody else, building somebody else's dreams, was not for me. So in 2013, I exited from corporate America and I got into entrepreneurship. I didn't jump immediately into the fitness industry because I didn't really know the path to create your own business there, but I know I wanted like to create my own schedule. So I launched a ticket brokerage, like nothing to do with fitness. I had some people that were in the industry, so I had some contacts. Basically, I became like a smaller version of a StubHub. We had a platform where you could buy and sell your own tickets. We invested a lot of our own money into packages and tickets globally here. So that was 2013 to 2017. That gave me the taste of like freedom as an entrepreneur. But what it also gave me was a lot of extra time, you know, a lot of extra time to dedicate to my own training, a lot of extra time to start kind of building a small kind of like little online business, I guess you could say. And then at the end of 2016, I got an email from Vince Del Monte, very close friend and mentor, both of ours. And they were promoting their hypertrophy. It was him and Ben. They were promoting their Hypertrophy Max launch. And I said, wait a minute, like, how are these guys doing this? Like, how did this, you know, skinny guy savior partner up with this IFBB bro? I knew Ben personally. Like, Ben lives here in Tampa, or did at the time, lived in Tampa, and we trained at the same gym. I said, how are they making money selling this program? So I reached out to Vince. And I think he had maybe a YouTube video or something where he was talking about his 0 to 6 figure formula seminar. So, okay, maybe there's something here. Like, I've seen this guy on YouTube for years, you know. I'm sure a lot of your audience knows Vince. Like, I didn't go to Vince for muscle building knowledge. Like, I went to him because he had taken that knowledge and, from what seemed like from the outside, had built a very successful life. So I was curious, and I said, hey, what's up with this coaching stuff that you're doing? What's up with this 0 to 6 figure thing? And at the time, he didn't have the mastermind, which I'm now a part of. He didn't have anything other than, yeah, I do some one-on-one coaching. I think it was $1,500 a month, or you could pay for 6 months in full for $7,500. And I was like, let's go. Like I'm all about this. I like what you're saying. So I hired Vince in the January 2017 to help us build what you now mentioned at the beginning was our masthetic muscle. And then that led us to, July of that summer, which was, I believe, when I met you at that first event in Toronto. So that's the story, man. I was an athlete growing up. I fell in love with fitness. It became a huge part of my identity. I competed at a somewhat high level here. Placed fourth in the state of Florida in 2016, and then always had the heart and drive to be an entrepreneur. So through, I guess, resourcefulness, I pieced it all together, and I landed at the doorstep of Vince Del Monte, and the rest has kind of been history.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have a similar story. First of all, bodybuilding is extremely high level sport because my wife used to be a bodybuilder, and I know how dedicated. I was a professional athlete, but nowhere near as dedicated in regards to how dedicated you need to be to step on stage. I think bodybuilding would probably be at that the highest level of dedication that you need in order to step on that scale, because you can't miss an inch. Missing an inch, missing a little bit is the difference between first place, second place, 10th place, or what have you. And knowing that everyone else is doing what they need to do, I consider that highest level, specifically in the fitness industry. And then, yeah.
No, I was gonna say I agree partially. Part of me doesn't really look at bodybuilding like the actual competition as a sport. I really think it's a pageant. I think the sport is the preparation leading you to get there. But you hit something on the head there. As a professional volleyball player, nobody's gonna know if you ate some extra fries at dinner, or nobody's gonna know if you put some cheese on the hamburger or whatever. The bodybuilding competition, if you eat the extra fry, if you have the ice cream when you're not supposed to, everybody's gonna know.
Yeah, totally. And even fighting too. When I fought in Thailand, it was yeah, I trained many fighters, high level fighters, UFC fighters, and sometimes sometimes talent will outdo the hard work that you need, right? MMA specifically, you need to know so many different disciplines. Muay Thai, you just need to know Muay Thai, but you still have to have that conditioning. You still have to go for the runs. You still got to do all those things, because when you step into that ring, someone's trying to knock you out, kick you in the head, and so, but it's still, you can still get away with not doing everything you need to do. Whereas bodybuilding, you can't. So that's one thing. The second thing I love is we do have a similar story, because you were in the corporate world, realized that your passion was fitness, because every single moment you had, you were researching. Every single moment I was researching fitness, and I had a blog, and I was doing everything, and I was making six figures, and I was in the President's Club. And I just ended up saying, you know what, if I want to do my passion and not work for someone else's dream, then I'm going to have to go into my president's office and say, hey man, I'm leaving. And, and then just go and then bet on yourself and do everything you can, which I was already doing. And it sounds like you were already doing. And then, yeah, meeting you was great. I remember meeting you at Vince's. You're jacked. I was like, I love this guy, man. I absolutely love this guy. I think I came up to you and I was like, I'm a very touchy guy. So anyway, so I love that story. So how old are you right now? How old are you?
I'm 38.
Okay, 38. So, and you're in Tampa. So, so where did porn come into all of this? When did it seep in? Because, let me hear you. Let me hear your story. Where did porn seep into all this? When did it start, and when did it become unmanageable? Right? Because that's pretty much what addiction is. Your life is becoming unmanageable because something else is taking it over.
Yeah, man, and it's something I ignored for a really long time. I think where, to answer the question, where did it come in? I'm glad you asked the question with my age, because I think it's important to have that context. My introduction to pornography was, I'm assuming your audience is a little bit older demographic, and I do speak to a lot of young men in their early 20s. They see this thing on the internet, 6, 7, 8 years old. For me, the first entry point was, Dad's magazine. I think probably a lot of men are going to resonate that. You're kind of nosing around, Dad's drawers, you kind of see something, you look in it, and it's this feeling of curiosity, oh, why does that body make me feel this way? And it wasn't even softcore Playboy stuff. My dad was into the really hardcore stuff. So from 6 years old, I was exposed to some real graphic material. But then I remember, man, I think I was 15 when we got like the first computer, like with real dial up, like kind of internet, like, and somebody picks up the phone and it kicks off. Dude, that first day on the internet, man, like, I don't know what it was. I don't know what told me to go look for it, but I remember landing in a chat room and starting conversations and starting to exchange pictures with people, like just randomly on the internet, 15 years old. And at that point, it's like, dude, everything I could ever possibly think I need at that age is right here on the computer. Like, an unlimited amount of naked women, like, I'm all for it. Like, it was obviously old school dial up, so I mean, it's not what we deal with today. But it was like the slow kind of downloading processing. It's like pixel by pixel by pixel. You're kind of like getting an image downloaded. And then one thing I was doing in my early 20s, 21, 22, one of the jobs I had was working in the wireless industry. So I was a sales rep for a T-Mobile distributor. So we had early access to like the BlackBerry phone. You know, it was kind of like the first smartphone ever created. And I remember getting that and being like, oh, that stuff that I was like finding on the computer, I now have it with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I would say that's probably when the real addiction became, because, you know, I was making good money at a time. So my life was going well, I guess, the way that I saw it then. You know, I had this internet thing where I could kind of find it anywhere. And if I was having a stressful day, instead of going to smoke a cigarette, like some people would do, working in a mall, like I would go into like a big kind of, you know, department store upstairs, and Dillard's would be the place. Every mall in Tampa has a Dillard's. So I'd go upstairs in the private restroom, sit in the handicapped spot. You could be in there for an hour, not a person would come in. So this would be where I would take my quote unquote smoke breaks, and it would be a porn break. So I knew, like, back then that it was probably a problem. You know, most guys watch pornography, I think, is what, you know, a lot of people are going to say, but I don't think most guys are taking breaks in the middle of the day to go watch it while they're supposed to be working. So that's when I kind of early on, you know, in my 20s knew it was a problem. And then as I got into kind of some serious relationships through my 20s, you know, I would get off of it, you know, if the relationship was going well, but I always found myself back into it. And then I remember one relationship specifically, like, I thought I was good at like hiding everything and deleting it. Somehow she was able to find like the real history, and she's like, what is this? And it became a massive, massive problem in our relationship. So this is like late 20s, early 30s. The real, you know, there's been a few different points that have been really pivotal for me. I think one was meeting Vince in that first event at Toronto. You know, when Luch came up and talked, like, I was kind of taken back. Like, at the time, I wasn't a believer. I didn't really have faith or religion growing up as a kid. Like, you know, it wasn't something that was really talked about in our home. So when I got in that environment with Vince, and, you know, Vince is somebody that he leads with his faith, and to hear Luch talk at that first event, like, as a strong kind of man, like, talk about the importance of faith and all these things, it began to kind of really get me to think a little bit. So I came back to Tampa. You know, I get connected with the guys over there at Critical Bench, Mike, Dan Long, a few people that we're talking about before we hit record here. So spending time with them, like, on a weekly basis, began to show me the model of like what it means to be like a real strong man, like a leader in your home, a leader in your community. And I didn't understand it at the beginning, but the first like 6 months, 8 months, I'm like, what is it about these guys? Like, why are they different than everybody else that I had ever spent time with or ever hung out with? About 8 months into it, I realized, like, all of these men lead their lives first through their faith. So, you know, to kind of make a long story short here, you know, I surrendered my life to Christ on October 18th or October 22nd of 2018. In those first, you know, 4 months, like, there's a Christian, like, I had no clue what I was doing. You know, my spiritual mentor was like, dude, find a church, like, start showing to church regularly. It's like, just open your Bible up. I was like, what do I read? He's like, just read Matthew. Like, just start reading every day, and the book will speak to you, and God will show you what you need to read. But I didn't understand that first. So as we turn the clock, it's funny, we're recording this kind of, you know, New Year's, you know, 2022. So as we turn the clock in 2019, like, I was ready to really clean up my life. I was drinking too much. I was spending a little bit too much time partying. And this was after me being saved. And, you know, I was also watching porn. So I spent that first month of January, no alcohol, no drugs, no partying, nothing, lost 21 pounds, got on the carnivore diet. And then I had a conversation with somebody on February 14th of 2019. And this was with a man that I respect a lot, like a former Marine, very strong kind of alpha presence. He's actually episode 2 of my podcast. But out of nowhere, he starts talking about his porn addiction and how he was using breathing exercises to kind of overcome and harness some of his sexual energy. And it was the first time I ever had another guy openly confessed that he had a problem with pornography. Now, at that point, I'd already been thinking about my own issue. I'd already been kind of researching, like, what is this doing to my brain? Is there a way out of this? How do I find freedom? But I hadn't had a conversation with anybody. It was all kind of internalized. But him sharing what he was going through kind of like gave me the freedom to be like, okay, here's your time, Frank. Like, just see where this conversation is going to go. So it's ironic, it was a day of love there. I was in a relationship at the time, something that, was a very big reason why for me at the beginning, because we were about 2.5 years into our relationship. And it was at the point where it's like, now or never, do or die. Like, is this going to be the future, or are you guys going to part, and go your separate ways? But I knew that if we were really going to pursue moving forward, like, she needed to know the truth. So I made a vow on that day, February 14th, 2019. I'm going to repeat it probably, a few more times here because I think it's so fundamental. I made a vow to Zach. I said, brother, I want to thank you for you sharing this because it's given me the freedom now to talk about my own struggles. And I made a commitment to him. I said, I'm never looking back. I'm committed to removing this thing out of my life. But I need to do two things. Zach, I need you to hold me accountable. Will you be my accountability partner? He said, absolutely, brother, anything you need. The second thing I said, I need to let Stephanie know the truth about who I am and what I'm doing. Like, I don't think it was any secret that maybe I watched porn, but I don't think she really understood that it was a porn addiction. So the next day, that morning, I kind of go into my closet at home here, where I had a secret computer. Like, I literally had a computer that nobody else had the password to. The only thing I did was watch pornography on it because of that previous relationship in my early 20s where I'd gotten caught. So I'm like, nobody's ever going to catch me again. So I grab the computer, walk into the room where she's at getting ready for the day. And I'm like, hey, Steph, like, I want to kind of have a conversation with you. She gave me this odd look, like, why are you holding a computer? So I go, I know I probably watch porn, somewhat regularly, but I don't think you really understand the severity of my addiction. I just put it all out there. I just confessed everything to her. We're both getting extremely emotional. She's breaking down crying. But I'm telling her, like, I'm so committed to getting this out of my life. I'm going to do whatever it can. And I'm going to start by destroying, like, the direct line that I have. And I took the laptop, and it sounds impressive when I say that I destroyed a laptop with my hand, but I just ripped it apart. It's two pieces that kind of fold together, but I had one piece in each hand. I literally tore it apart down the middle, so that was kind of a cool part of the story. And then, I followed up with Zach, and I knew that day that something was going to come out of this. I couldn't tell you what it was back then, but I knew that this was going to be a foundational part of the beginning of a new journey for me. So that was February 15th, 2019. Now, those next 3 months, man, like, everything in my life changed. Literally, the way that I saw the world began to change. I understand it now through a neuroscience lens because my brain rebooted and I got free of this addiction. But I said, other people need to know about this. If this has happened to me, like, other people need to hear this story. And that was the genesis for me starting the podcast, The Superhuman Life, is I just wanted to put this story out there in the world. And I saw an opportunity because I was somebody that had achieved things. I was a high performer, competing at a high level bodybuilding, really studying personal development, studying psychology, studying all these high performance principles. If I was still struggling with this addiction, what about the guys that don't have my toolbox? Like, what are they doing? Like, because for me, I don't want to say it was easy, but when I made that decision, like, yeah, it was tough from a discipline and willpower standpoint, but I'd learned all that 10 years competing as a bodybuilder, like how to deny yourself, how to do the thing when it's not what you want to do, how to not give in to temptation to eat a cookie. It's all the same kind of psychological things that had to take place. Certain character traits are necessary, but I had those. But I know that there's millions of men that don't. And that's not a knock at them if I say you don't have the character traits. It's just you haven't put yourself in a position to learn and develop those things. So that's why I started the podcast, was I just needed to put this story out there. I was running Frank Rich Fitness at the time. I was also working for a marketing agency with Rudy Maurer. I think you probably know Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy.
Well, I was working with Rudy. So that was it, man. I didn't see a coaching business. I didn't see anything that we're really doing today other than a place for me to have conversations about my story and my journey and to invite other people on. About 6 months into the podcast, though, like, everything changed, man. Again, like, people went from sending me messages and emails daily, like, thank you for your muscle building tips. Thank you for helping me build 10 pounds of muscle or help me lose 15 pounds of fat, which is great. Like, I love that. I love that I can help somebody change the way that the physique looks. The messages start to be, thank you for your openness. Thank you for your vulnerability to have this conversation. And then, can you help me? And I was like, wait a minute. I don't know if I could help you. Like, I just flipped a switch and kind of decided to change. So I was like, maybe. And this will get us now to like early 2020, right before the pandemic. I was at an event. I was at one of Vince's event, and they were teaching this kind of like, SMS post tactic where you kind of put a post out there. I'm looking for 5 guys that do this and want to achieve this. And I was like, okay, this looks like something. I'm like, let me see. Let me see what happens if I put these. So I literally that week, and like I put the post out there, threw it up on my Instagram, which my Instagram had only been talking about muscle building at this point. Like I had no mention of porn, maybe a little bit of my story through the podcast, but it was still about building muscle. And I said, hey, I'm looking for 5 guys that are sick and tired of living with their secret habit and are committed to removing porn out of their life in the next 4 months. I'll personally coach you, provide the support, accountability, and everything you need to reboot your brain. That day, there was $6,000 in my bank account. Not there before, but 6,000 came in like from that post, and it said, okay, shit, now I got to build a program, like, because I sold it before I had it developed. Different topic there, marketing concept, but that was it, man. That was the genesis of Rebuilt Recovery. February 2020, landed the first 2 clients, and those clients were really allowed me to build the curriculum in real time, because I got real life feedback. I got real input from this is working, this isn't working, this didn't make sense this week, can you refine this? And now we've obviously spent the last year and a half, almost 2 years, really perfecting that program. But that's it, man. I don't remember the original question because I kind of took it all over the place there.
No, you went exactly where you needed to go, because I asked you about how this all got started and your porn addiction. That was perfect. I think, I got a lot of things here, so this is great. So it's funny because you mentioned something, the demographic of a lot of the men who are going to be listening to this, and women, are going to be in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I know that for me, porn started, I'm 52. So I lived porn in magazines at first. Obviously, dad would bring home magazines or gonna go to the store. Then beta, not VHS, but beta, right? Betamax. You put those movies in, and satellite.
I think this is pre-me.
Yeah. Beta were the smaller things before VHS. You put the big, heavy, solid beta, Betamax into your VCR, and then satellites. Like my dad used to come home with like most fathers, I guess, I don't know, but my dad came home with a lot of betas with satellite stuff on there, and so during my high school, it wasn't available, like there was no web, there was no online, so you had to work to get it. And then when you got it, you're like, okay guys, let's come over to my house and let's watch some, because porn back then was like a whole story, like it was literally like a movie, like you're sitting down watching a movie. And then in university, at Queen's University, we used to have a porn night, which was really more just social, but have it in the background, old school. You're just kind of making fun of it, you're not really like, you know what I mean? And then for me, porn was kind of like, if I was drinking or what have you, then I may look at it, but it wasn't really a massive thing for me, because I would go to strip joints and do all that stuff. Like I'd go like literally live, because it wasn't something that was readily available. And then when it became readily available, I was just too old and too focused on other things to really understand. Oh yes, you can get it at the tip of your fingers, but I'm sure, like I say, the demographic, a lot of people can relate to my story, because in regards to like how I viewed porn back in the early days. But we have kids, right? We have sons, we have kids, daughters, sons, whomever it is, that can get very affected by this, and even younger kids too that can be affected. And we have to have that conversation, as fathers and mentors, to ensure that it may not be a problem. What I mean? Like I got it's 25 years old now, but I don't know. I'm going to ask him, hey man, do you watch porn all the time? Or, it's just a question that it's kind of like the birds and the bees, are you doing drugs and are you watching porn? Because it can become a massive problem. And I'm, one of the things that I want to ask you is, and this may be with you, but you're coaching now. You're doing a lot of coaching and mentoring men and helping them with porn addiction. So you must, know about what's going on with porn in general, like how it's affecting many men. And first and foremost, how does that affect the way people look at women? How does that affect the way men look at women? Because I know that there's the incels and there's all this other stuff. We had a massive incident that happened here in Toronto where a guy who's an incel, which are guys who hate women and hate good-looking guys. And I don't know the deep into it, but my wife kind of gives me the overview of what incels are. And then because she works in forensics. And so anyway, he jumped in his car and ran over and killed a whole bunch of people down our street. And my wife was one of the forensics who was processing the scene. And so how does porn affect guys and women, like that relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm so glad you added all of that with your story. I appreciate you sharing that, man. We have coached a lot of men, and our range of men that I've worked with is 18. I obviously can't work with children, but I have worked with an 18-year-old high school senior, and I've coached guys into their 60s. So it does affect everybody, no matter what your age is. And I think it's important to, when we're going to talk about everything from this point on, the effects, the harm, the side effects, I want to preface it under the context that where we're going to go now is talking about internet streaming pornography. It is a completely different drug. It is a completely different animal than everything that you talked about, the magazines, the VHS, all the other stuff. What is referred to in the neuroscience world, this is not my terminology. This is coming from doctors and researchers and people that are exploring and researching dopamine reward circuits in our brain. Pornography is identified and recognized as what's known as a supernormal stimulus. So everything we're doing right now, there's obviously a lot of kind of going on behind the scenes in our brain. There's synapses and firing and things are kind of happening all the time when you're consuming. As people are listening, when I say certain things, triggers certain responses. So everything we're consuming is creating responses in our brain. What happens with pornography, though, is because it's so readily available. There's an infinite amount of supply, 165 years of pornography on the internet right now. You'd have to sit down straight for 165 years just to consume the amount of pornography that's on one site. So it's all this readily available. And every new video creates a new neural response. So first, second exposure, what ends up happening is creating a new baseline of dopamine in your brain. So dopamine is what's referred to as the currency of addiction, the currency of motivation in your brain. So you establish a new baseline because it's that first hit. It's like, whoa, this is something like my brain is not created or not wired to handle. It's super normal. Like there's nothing in the natural world that'll create the stimulus response of dopamine that you get from pornography. Yes, some hardcore drugs, meth, cocaine, like these real high dopaminergic drugs. And I'm not saying porn is the same as coke. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. The response in our brain, though, is very, very similar. Now you asked about the perception of women and what it does to the male's brain. So they've put scans on the person's brain while watching pornography. And we have different circuits and the different areas of our brain. When you watch pornography, the part of the brain that lights up is the part of your brain that is associated with recognizing and identifying objects. Okay, so when I see this cup here sitting on my desk, if I was going to go grab it, there's a part of my brain before I can actually reach out and grab it that's going to say, that's a cup, that's an object, I need to go grab it to pick it up. The different part of your brain, when I look at you, when I see you, there's a different part of the brain that is activated. That's a part for a relationship. That's a part for a connection. What they've noticed is through brain scans is when you're watching pornography, the part of the brain that lights up is a part that is associated with objects. Okay, so where this leads you to is men talk about, I objectify every single woman that I look at. Because through neuroscience, what fires together wires together. So every time you sit down and watch pornography, your brain is lighting up in the object center, but you're seeing the human physique. You're seeing a person or what you believe is a person. So you're beginning to wire those connections that when I see people become objects in my life. So this can be sexual objectification, or this can be where a lot of relationships in my life, when in my 30s, it's like, it was no more about a mutual relationship. It's what are you going to do for me? What financial gain are you going to bring to me? What fun gain? What party gain? Whatever it was. Every relationship that I had became transactional. It became part of like an object. It was a relationship not with a person, but a relationship with the object, the person that I had. So that's probably the biggest thing that I just wanted to make sure that we get across. It's literally you're wiring and programming yourself that when you see people, you begin to identify them as objects. I'm not really well versed on the incel community, so I can't really speak a lot to what you're saying there. Obviously, know that they're out there. I think that many of those guys, like if I could get my hands on them for 90 to 120 days and reboot their brain, their entire perspective on the world would change.
I think so. I 100% think so too. And wow, that was big. I love how you brought neuroscience into this because that connection is very important. I always tell people that we don't our prefrontal cortex is where we make the most important decisions in our lives.
Executive function.
Absolutely. And so that doesn't happen. That doesn't completely develop until you're 21. Now, this is when I was in university, when I was doing neuroscience, it was 21. I don't know what it is now, but it's 21. So you're thinking an 18, 19, 20-year-old, and 21-year-old who doesn't have that prefrontal cortex. Now their brain is totally messed up. And not just that person, because your prefrontal cortex can be damaged in many different ways throughout the life. Specifically, if you're addicted to something, that thing is all, this is, you don't have those inhibitions anymore, right? Like your inhibitions drop, what you think is right and what you think is wrong, that's totally messed up just because of that consistent and constant addiction to whatever it is. But does it become a problem? So like, let's say that I'm watching porn, and now I'm watching the same thing, but obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but some people, they kick it up a notch. They keep kicking it up. Okay, this is not stimulating me anymore. Do you hit thresholds? It's just like drugs, right? Like you do, the first one is amazing. Now you're still chasing that first one, but now you're doing more, or now you're changing your drug of choice, or now you're adding people to your drug partying or whatever it is. Is that the same thing with porn? Like do you hit that threshold and you start going, okay, now I'm going to watch orgies. Now I'm going to watch freaking, she-males. Now I'm going to watch freaking people who are missing limbs. Now I'm like, does that just keep going? And then when you hit a point where it's like, I need real stuff now. Like, is that something that you've come across?
Brother, such an important conversation right now. Such an important conversation that we're about to have. Absolutely. What you just described there in the addiction, space is identified and it's called the sensitization desensitization effect. That first hit, I've done, I don't say I've done a lot of drugs, but I've done my fair amount of them in my life. That first hit of cocaine, like I never was able to duplicate that ever again. Like the feeling that it gave me. Same thing happens with pornography. We talked about first, second exposure, reestablishes a new baseline for your brain. You never, with that same type of content, will receive that hit again. So this is where you begin to chase certain things. You begin to get into, you probably start with maybe some vanilla porn, one guy, one girl, then it becomes one guy, two girls, then it becomes 10 guys, one girl, then it becomes, you talked about the she-male, you talked about the gangbang, you talked about, the gay stuff, like whatever it is. I don't want to get too, specific here. I'll kind of let people's brains kind of take where they want to go. But there's a powerful book, and it's a mandatory read in our coaching program. It's called Surfing for God. And the author, Michael John Cusack, talks about how his porn addiction led him into the realm of escorts, led him into the realm of prostitution, seeking out strip clubs. And I've had a lot of conversations as well with people in the human trafficking space. I don't know how much you want to get into that, but you don't end up at the point of purchasing sex from a trafficked victim without going through the pornography tunnel first. And I believe that to my core. Nobody ends up buying sex if they don't struggle with a massive porn addiction. So absolutely, brother. And it's something that I experienced as well. The things that I was watching, in my 30s, my mid 30s, late 30s, when I finally, mid 30s, because I'm in my late 30s now, was not the same stuff that I was into. And then it gets even more dangerous when you begin to try to bring that into your relationship. This was something that I struggled with because I thought I had these certain desires and needs. So I had a woman that was willing to, sleep with me. It's like, well, why can't we just do the stuff that I'm hooked on? It caused a lot of tension and real, fights within our relationship because like, why won't you do these things? I'll just go get this from pornography. So very important conversation right now, because absolutely, like once you establish that new baseline, it becomes like, I need more and more hardcore graphic materials. And this is where you kind of get that chaser effect. Like, anybody that's had like a coke problem, like you'll spend all night looking for the next hit. Like, if you got a massive problem with pornography, it's not about the finish. Many times it's the pursuit of finding that next image. Like I'll talk to a lot of guys. They're like, I watched porn for 8 hours today, but it was like 20 to 30 second clips and I was on to the next video, because the dopamine comes in the pursuit of the goal. Like dopamine is a chemical of motivation. So it's designed to help us go out there and tackle the world and create businesses and build skyscrapers. But the pursuit of the next pornography is really where the guys show. They're like, next video, next video, next video. So yeah, I hope I answered your question there, but 100%.
Oh yeah, totally.
In hijacks that.
For sure, because it does hijack your, like for me anyways, I remember in my 30s when I had a girlfriend, and at that point I was still kind of, I was watching porn because I was doing drugs and I was watching porn, and I was kind of like, but I didn't like to co-mingle both of them. Porn was separate, relationship was separate, but I was having problems coming. I was having problems finishing because mentally there was no connection. The porn disconnected me with reality. And then, whenever I was masturbating, I'd be masturbating to porn. And then later on, then when I reached my 40s or early 40s, I realized that was a problem. So I had to start to rewire my mind and really with my with my relationship with my wife, I don't even know if my wife doesn't know this, but anyway, so I would be, now when I'm doing, masturbating or whatever, pleasure myself, I'd be thinking about my wife, and it wouldn't be porn. Porn's not out because I want that relationship to be connected so that when we are together, it's a magical moment, right? So I had to disconnect from that before and just think about, I'm just thinking about nice things that I've seen before with my wife and putting that in my head when I'm doing it myself, so that when it really happens, I'm there. Like I'm actually there with her doing what I was thinking about before. It's amazing. It's actually, it literally.
You understand this because you understand because you study the brain and neuroscience a lot here. What fires together wires together. So attaching the act of ejaculation or the masturbation and release to visual images versus real intimacy, like you begin to create, that is the pathway for you to get to that end result. Like I've had conversations with men that literally will have to watch pornography while having sex, or watch pornography like while their girlfriend is kind of going down on them, just to kind of keep it up. And one other thing I wanted to talk about, because we briefly touched on the kids and kind of how it distorts like your own perception of reality and what real sex and intimacy is. I'm not sure if you saw the Billie Eilish thing that came out. She's a pop star here in the States in December. So young girl, young woman, I think probably in her late teens, maybe. I think she might be in her early 20s. Like Billie Eilish is her name. She was on the Howard Stern show, or whatever he calls whatever it is that he's doing. But she talked about how she was introduced to pornography at like 11 years old. And over time, because she got into these hardcore things that we described why it happens, this began to kind of distort her perception of what sex is. And I've heard a talk. It was by Clayton, who's the founder of Fight the New Drug, incredible kind of anti-porn organization, really raising awareness. He shares a story about a young boy, 12, 13 years old. Kid's excited, like he's got kind of like a little girlfriend. He wants to go on a date with his girlfriend. So the parents are like, we don't want you going out in public. Why don't you just bring her, over to the house? We'll set you guys up in the car. You can kind of have like an outdoor kind of car kind of driving thing. I don't know if they had a movie playing, but they were just kind of let the kids kind of hang out in the front yard, inside of the car. They leave them be, 13 years old. We'll check on, every couple hours, whatever. We want you guys to have your kind of freedom. They return back like to go check on the kids, and the kid literally has his hands around the girl's throat. Like she's kind of like holding on. She's like, what the hell is going on? And he literally was all like simulating, like strangling her. And they pull him out of the car. They're like, what are you doing? They're like, well, I love her. Like, is it what I'm supposed to do? So this kid had been like, literally, he'd been introduced to porn, and he'd seen this hardcore abuse graphic material, and it literally warped his perception of what real sex was. He thought he was supposed to strangle a girl that he had feelings for. So, I mean, we can go so far down that hole. I have a lot of podcasts, for the parenting stuff. I had a guest on called Chris McKenna, who runs an organization called Protect Young Eyes. But that's something I'm really passionate about, because those kids are the future. Like I got maybe 60 years left on this earth, and then I'm gone. But I want to make sure that we leave it good. These kids growing up, like this is our future. Like we need to educate them. We need to have the real, honest, vulnerable conversations with them. Like Chris says, like porn should be the most popular word in your house if you have kids. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we kind of added that caveat there with the ability.
We are definitely going to revisit this specifically in the parenting, because this conversation we're having right now is about anyone who's listening, well, it's about everybody, but anyone who's listening who has that problem, who knows they have that problem, you need to reach out to Frank, and you need to listen to this entire podcast. We're not done yet, but I'm just throwing that out here. And then after that, after they hear this, we need to have another podcast episode about parenting, because you said something very, 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 very important. It is a different world out there. Just with my guys, with my over 40 alpha men who use this program, a lot of them struggled at the beginning because they didn't know how to use the app. They also, I'm not computer savvy or whatever the words they use when they email customer service. And still to this day, there's a lot who kind of struggle with the online thing. But that's just because we at our age, we weren't really, we grew up at an older age in this, technology world. Your kids, your grandchildren live in it. So as soon as they get a phone, I'm not even going to say the computer now, because the computer seems to be even more, it's starting to become more archaic, right? The only people who really use computers is people who have, jobs or whatever, but the young kids are on the phones, and it's readily available, 100%. Whether you think you can put the protection on or not, they're going to find it and they're going to get it.
100%. I want to add something there. I know you probably do some paid direct advertising. Like, they don't even have to go look for it.
Shit.
The minute they get that phone in their hand, it's looking for them.
Right.
And I think that's where we need to understand. Like, I say that the sex exploitation industry, so I'm going to bring pornography and human trafficking into one umbrella. Sex exploitation is one of the strongest forces of evil in the world. It is coming for you. It is coming for your kids. And if you do not educate yourself and are not aware of the dangers, it could be, I've had conversations with parents that download videos off of YouTube, and it's like, the minute I download this video, I got to put my kid to the side because I know I'm going to get hit with a pornography advertisement. If the kids are on social media, like Instagram knows that it's a boy, Instagram knows that it's a male, and if they can get you hooked on this thing, it's going to keep on their app so much longer. So these algorithms can be our friend if we understand how they work, but they can also be our enemy. And I think that's the important thing to understand, is you don't even have to think that your kids need to go out there and look for it, because the minute they have that phone in their hand, it's going to start looking and finding them.
That was huge, actually. That was very powerful, because I didn't even, I know about that, because you just click on one picture on Instagram and now you look at your search and it's every picture is that the same as that one picture. Like, wait a minute, I was in fitness a second ago, or I was shopping a second ago, and this one thing came up. Why do I have asses in my face? In my search, I literally clicked one thing because I'm trying to find my wife what do you call it again, leggings, and yes, it was nice leggings, so I clicked it, and now I got G-strings in my face. Like, what the hell? And then I realized, oh, of course I have G-strings in my face because I clicked that one thing, right? And it went down that hole. So you're absolutely right. It's coming for them. It's already there. So now that conversation has to be huge. So we're definitely going to have another podcast episode about parenting. But now I want to turn into this pandemic, because the pandemic has isolated many, many, many people. So I can only imagine how intensified porn addiction has become. I don't know stats, but it must have become more intense in regards to more people getting addicted and really living in that isolation, because addiction happens in isolation a lot of times, right? It starts everywhere, and then you begin to isolate. What have you found with the pandemic?
Yeah, so for me, like I said, I really got started, really deeply in the work right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I don't know a lot. I don't have a lot of, my own kind of anecdotal evidence of working in the space pre-pandemic, because it's February 2020. And then, by the middle of March, the world was kind of shut down. One of the first videos that I did shoot, though, was how to stay porn free during the coronavirus lockdown. I think we were going to do 2 days or 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It's now 2+ years later, whatever the hell. But yeah, man, you hit on a few things. I don't have stats as far as how porn addiction has risen, but addiction in general is up 300%. Depression, anxiety, suicide, all these numbers shot through the roof, man. So And I mean, once again, just talking about like the forces of evil, like, you know, Pornhub, like one of the biggest sites in the world, came out offering like free memberships to their like platinum thing right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I would have to assume that it's obviously shot numbers through the roof. But yeah, I mean, it's something that you said there. Addiction does feed itself in isolation. So, you know, if you're still in an era that is struggling with lockdown, like maybe you can't meet with people in person regularly, get in some type of online community. You know, join the Alpha 40 Men. You know, join one of our groups where we meet, you know, weekly with the men. But you got to have something where you're meeting and you're having conversations with people on a regular basis. And then obviously, you know, controlling your devices, not taking your phone to your bedroom, things like that. So there's a lot of, you know, real tactics and hacks that you can do. But we need people, man. Like, we were wired for intimacy. We were wired for relationship. It's a part, like if you're born, you know, and you're never touched, like, and they got some research out of, like, you know,
monkeys.
Russia, like the 60s
and the
and
rhesus
70s.
monkeys.
Yeah, like you'll die. Like, it's an important part. So you need connection, you need intimacy, you need relationships with people. So I'm assuming that's probably shot numbers through the roof, but I don't have those stats like offhand.
Yeah. So the other thing is, you know, just if you're listening to this too, like, and you do know they have a problem, you have to man up. Not man up. I don't want to say man up. Sorry. You don't have to. Sorry, I should not have said that. You have to understand that connecting with Frank is going to be safe, right? Like, it's a safe place, and it's a safe place to be vulnerable, and it's a safe place to change, because you know, one of the things that I always tell the guys in my program is we don't judge. There's no judgment. Like, you come in and you're 300 pounds and you take that first picture, nobody's judging you because you're 300 pounds. They're saying, okay, listen, this is where you are today. You're not going to be here in 60 days. You're not going to be here in 90 days. You're not going to be here in a year, because not only do you have a program, but you also have us to help you. So we're going to help you through this. No one ever judges, oh, that first workout was really, really hard. Someone's in like phase 23. The first thing they say is, yes, I remember how tough that workout was, buddy. Just keep going. They don't go, man up. You know, I'm in phase 23. Been doing this for 2 years. No, it's always, oh, dude, I remember that workout. I remember that one exercise. And then it just allows people to become more vulnerable. And although porn is a very taboo thing that like you said, it needs to be in every household. That word has to be something that you talk about all the time. It needs to be uncovered. It needs to be released, because if it's not, then the isolation and the will continue, and the problems will continue. Well,
I think it's important too, man, just to address, man, if you're struggling with this, like, you're not in the minority,
right?
You're in the majority.
Yes.
You know, 70 to 80% of men that have been questioned or have, you know, participated in a survey admit to having some type of problem. This is 78% of men that are willing to participate in a survey. How many men won't actually admit it? So how high could that number potentially be? So if you're out there and this is a problem, or maybe you're thinking it could be, or you just want to have a conversation with somebody, you are not by yourself. Like, you are in fact in the majority of men right now in the world. So I think maybe looking at it through that lens can kind of lift some of that guilt, lift some of that shame. And many times it's literally, I tell all the guys, like, we offer free consultation calls, you know, like, we're not going to try to sell you anything. We just want to have conversations. Many of the men's lives changed, just like mine did on February 14th, when I found a safe place to have a conversation. So if anything, I just want to open up a place to have a conversation, because something can only cause shame in your life if you don't openly admit it. The minute that you say that this is a problem and I'm looking to do something about it, the shame has now been removed. So I don't know if you've ever read the book Power versus Force. Like, shame is like the lowest level of consciousness. It's like death and then shame. So just getting you out of shame and openly having a conversation will begin to move you in the right direction to finding freedom in your life.
Power versus Force. That's amazing. What you just said there is incredible. And
Dr. David Hawkins.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Hawkins. Yeah, that is so incredible. Yeah. So let's two more things. One is there a place that people could go? Like, you know, I go to Narcotics Anonymous because I'm a recovering addict, but Porn Anonymous, like, I'm sure there's something like that. Is there something like that?
Yeah.
Or, so, like, you know, it's so new, right?
Yeah, man. Like even when I got started and what's happened in just these last 2 years, like the conversation has completely changed. When you look in the DSM-5, which is the book that kind of recognizes addiction, it's a clinical book. Pornography addiction is nowhere to be found in there. So the treatment in terms of like groups would be done through an SAA, which would be a sex alcoholics or sex addiction anonymous. So there are those type of categories. The only problem and I'm a fan, like I'm not here to knock AA or any of those organizations because I think they've done more good for addiction community than any other organization. The problem I have is that every day you need to raise your hand and identify yourself as an addict. A lot of our work is centered around an identity change, taking you from the person that is struggling and equipping you with the tools to live a life without pornography. So I'm not a fan of you every day like having to raise your hand and say, I'm addicted to porn, I'm addicted to porn. Let's admit that there's a problem, but the minute that we're committed to change, like let's put that past self behind us and let's create a new identity for who you are. So there are those type of communities out there, and if that's what you're looking for, the church is not doing a great job right now. I think only 4% of churches say that they have a problem that specifically treats this. It's something that I'm passionate about, and we'll see in the future what we can do to help, the churches and whatnot with other programs and groups. But yeah, SAA would be the place to go if you're looking for just a type of community. But reach out to me, man. We have tons of resources, we have groups and everything.
That's what I was gonna say. That's why I call myself a recovering addict, because I know that if I don't do the things I need to do, then I can get right back in there. And I think the same thing would be for porn addiction or any type of addiction. Yes, you're recovering, but you still need to work on your addiction every single day, or you can easily get back down to where you were before. And so that's why I think it's important to and this is my other thing too. I'm just getting on context, but there's a difference between alcohol and narcotics. So the alcoholic who's coming in speaks totally different and is not as hardcore as a narcotics user. Like there are some that are, but it's like it's a different. It's yes, there's addictions, different things. So going to Sex Anonymous, I don't think is gonna be a good enough connection to the porn, because they're two different things, although they're under the same umbrella. That's why going to you is going to be key, because you're focusing on that one thing, and sometimes you can get lost in like, what the hell is this person talking about? I can't even relate, because it is about relating to other people too when you have those conversations, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there is 78% or 80% other men out there who have the same problem. When you do know that you're not alone and that there's a place you can go to help recover and to help push that to the I'm not that person anymore. I've just unleashed myself and kind of just shed that off, because we're always growing, we're always trying to be better every single day. We should be doing that. And that means shedding some of that all those old habits. The only place you're going to go is Frank Rich, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, bro. I appreciate that. I'll tell you a quick story here about the logo that we created, because it kind of resonates right with what you were saying there. But I want to touch on the alcohol thing real quick, because I had a doctor on my podcast, Dr. Rob Kelly, out of Kelly Recovery Group in Texas, I believe is where he's at. This guy completely changed the way that I look at alcoholism, because as an uneducated person in the alcohol space, like looked at that addiction as the same as everything. Like you're holding on to a past identity. But what Rob shared with me on our talk is that the alcoholic's brain is different than every other brain. So there is something genetically predisposition for alcoholism. So that's why I think maybe that recovery approach works, because like we talked about the dopamine and kind of these neural pathways and stuff like that. With alcohol, like no matter how long you go without it, it's always that next sip is always gonna take you right back to the point where you left. And this is where somebody can be completely clean of alcohol for 3, 5, 10, 30 years, and then one drink sets them down this escapade of just completely destroying their life once again. So the alcoholic's brain is different than drug addicts, is different than porn addicts. So yes, for those guys, get into the AA recovery group. But yeah, you talked about kind of ripping the skin off and kind of getting rid of the old self. So you can see our logo here is actually a lion's face inside of a phoenix. So the phoenix is the symbol of death and resurrection. So we bring these men in, there's an element of like kind of breaking you down at the beginning. Like, I don't want to make you feel bad about yourself. We've got to detach you from your old self and then release you back out into the world as a lion. So we take you from a broken man, we take you through that death and kind of resurrection of, you know, reestablishing who you are. Then we send you back out into the world as a lion. So
Love it.
that's kind of cool.
I love it, man. You know what? We are going to get on another podcast and talk about more. I think this is an important conversation that needs to continue amongst people in general, men and women, but obviously, you know, I'm biased towards my over 40 alpha brothers. So, and men in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s who were trying to we're trying to rebuild a better community, and we can only do that when we rebuild ourselves, and then we rebuild our families, and then we rebuild our communities. So is there anything you want to leave us with before we share where to find you? Because people are going to hear this and they're going to want to find you. So what's the last thing that we can leave with before we part?
Yeah, man, I think it's maybe just reinforcing, you know, what we talked about here a few minutes ago. Like if you're out there and you're hearing this, you're still with us. First of all, thank you for you sticking around. I know it was obviously, you know, maybe not the most comfortable conversation to listen to, but if you're out there and this is something that you're thinking about, like, for one, just realize like you're not alone. You're not on an island. There is a way out of it. You know, we've had hundreds of transformations. I myself have been an incredible transformation story, but you're not broken. You know, you don't need this in your life. It may feel like that right now. It may feel like there's no path out of it, but we have the tools, we have the resources, and we have the community to help you find freedom in your life. So that would maybe be my parting words here is if you're struggling and you're thinking that you're the only one that's got this in your life right now, you're not. So don't allow that to be what your identity is. And there is a path to freedom, and we've proven that.
Man, thank you so much. Where can I want to know exactly where someone can reach out to you and ask for help first before we go into where we can reach you, like to you know, social media and all that stuff, because there's someone who's listening to this who needs help right now and they're like, Funk, just tell me where the hell to reach Frank quickly.
Best place to send me an email, frank@rebuiltrecovery.com.
Again,
send me an email, and frank@rebuiltrecovery.com, and just say, hey, you know, I heard you on Funk's podcast. We'll love to link up on a call with you, and you know, we'll figure something out. You can find me on Instagram if you want to send me a DM on Instagram. It's @thesuperhumanfrank. You know, and if you want to maybe kind of start working on this yourself, we have a free resource. It's the 7 steps to living life without porn. It's about 35-page kind of guided manual where we walk you through how to create a life without pornography. I'm very big on you're the creator of the life. You're the co-creator of your life. So you need to be proactive in building life that you want to have without pornography. So we walk you through that system. So it's the 7-step guide to living life without porn. You can find that at www.the7stepguide.com, and it's all spelled out. The 7-step is spelled out SEVEN stepguide.com.
Love it. And then you are coming out with something. I don't know if I'm letting this out the bag, but you are going to be coming out with something, right?
Yes. Well, no, we do have a course and program available. So if you're ready to take action and you're ready to start working, so it's 16 weeks of dripped out videos, education, curriculum. We talked about some of the reading resources. There's tons of, there's 40 hours of training videos specifically with me delivered in a step-by-step 16-week system. There we integrate a nutrition protocol, there's supplementation, there's a training as a part of it. Obviously I wanted to provide something, I spent my lifetime mastering building muscle and training as like I needed to bring this into this as well. So there's no porn addiction recovery. There's very few porn addiction programs in the world, but there's nothing that comes at it from a true holistic perspective. So we have all the materials, all the assignments to reboot, rewire your brain. We're going to help you rebuild your body, not to take anything from what, Funk is doing here. It would obviously be, supplement to what you guys are doing inside the over 40 alpha program there. But yeah, it's Reboot Your Life is the name of the course.
Okay, we'll have all the links. We'll have everything available for you guys on the podcast blog and everywhere else. Frank, thank you so much, man. This has been amazing. I got goosebumps. I love it. I love this. I love addiction and talking about how to help men and women and people out of addiction. And this is one that it definitely needs to be continued to have a light shined on it.
Either one. We know what you're saying.
We need to put the sun on it. That's what we need to do.
I'm sure I butchered some words here today, so it's all good.
Thank you so much, my brother, and we'll talk soon. All right, take care.
Love you, brother.